Welcome to Superhero Stuff You Should Know. This is going to be a change from the Flash stuff because we're tired of talking about that movie. This is Ben Man, and with me is...
Andrew Verse.
And we have a special guest with us. This is Tim Maxwell from Neuverse Creative. Welcome, Tim.
Thanks so much for having me, guys. Great honor.
And we are going to be covering one of the Unmade Spider-Man scripts that's a little bit more obscure and has been adapted by Tim over at Neuverse Creative. And we're going to talk a little bit about Tim's work over there, our collaborations with that, before we dive into sort of this Unmade Spider-Man script that has been written by a very prominent comic book writer of Jim Shooter. And it is called Spider-Man Operation Z. I'm going to display it up here, the thumbnail that Tim did for this. So this is one of your favorites, I believe, from what you told me.
It is, yeah. I'm very, very fond of it. My kids love it. It's just a cool project. I like it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this was my introduction. Your version of Operation Z was your introduction, my introduction to the script. I didn't know this even existed until this popped up on my feed. So I'm just like, all right, well, it seemed appropriate to bring you on for the episode where we talk about kind of the one that you introduced me to. But I remember I first found your channel just kind of randomly. It popped up probably because we have overlapping audiences, and found out that you did Batman Dark Knight, the one with the Man-Bat, as an audio drama. And I was like, awesome, because I had always liked the idea of hey, Andrew and I talk a lot about these scripts, but there's not it's us commenting on it, but it's just the two of us. We're not going to be able to, and we don't have the time to bring the whole thing to life and dramatize it. So I really love that someone else was out there actually dramatizing these unmade scripts. So for our audience who isn't as familiar with your channel, could you go a little bit more into what you do at Neuverse Creative and what type of projects you do?
Yeah, so great question. Again, thanks for having me, man. Great privilege. I'm a huge fan of you guys' channel. And Neuverse started with Superman Lives. I was fascinated with that project for many, many years, and it always wanted to bring that to life in some way. And so we had the great documentary that came out, what was that, 2015, something like that, by the late and great John Schnepp. Mm-hmm. And so, but I think the only thing missing from that was the story, the script, what would the story have been like? We got a lot of the visual presentation of it, which was fantastic. And so it just clicked one day. I was like, well, I've never done this before, but I think I can make an audio drama or audio book, something like that. So I just took the script, adapted it, fell in love with that whole process, and put that out there. It was very, very amateur. Even if you go back and listen to that one, or my first few, really, they've come a long way. And so, but we've been doing that ever since, taking unproduced screenplays and scripts and treatments, as well as short stories. I've written a couple things. Obviously, Ben, you've come in and you've been starting to write for the channel too, which is amazing. And so that's what we do. We take scripts and ideas and turn them into audio dramas. And so yeah, we're going to keep doing that for as long as I can. And I'm just glad there's an audience for it. Glad people like it.
Yeah.
Is this basically more came out of a love for lost media, or did it come out of a love for audio dramas? Did you listen to the old Superman serials back in the day, or kind of a combination of the two?
It was more or less a love for lost media, for the canceled movies, projects that never made it to the screen. Probably more of that than anything else. I'm a fan of the Batman Forever audio drama from the 90s, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But there's probably a lot that I haven't heard. For me, what I do is a love for these stories like Superman Lives, Batman Dark Knight, or even some of the early versions of scripts. It's for me, it's like the what if, what if we got this instead of that? That's for me what it's all about.
Cool. Yeah, it's a little bit easier to take on than trying to recreate it with a fan film or something, right? Too, right? You can kind of take that script and sort of direct your own audio movie, essentially, right?
Yeah, because I think a lot of people have talked about, say, Superman Lives, taking that, turning it into an animated film, which I don't think will ever happen. I would love for it to happen. Mm-hmm. And obviously someone like me, there's no way I could pull that together, So it really came down to, what can I do? It's something that's possible. And I've worked with audio before, so I had an idea of how I would do it. And so just went for it. In fact, I almost gave up on it because I realized how much work it was when I started actually doing it. I think Yeah, I think even some of my voice actors were like, "Hey, what happened to that thing that I voiced like 8 months ago? Like, are you still working on that?" I'm like, "I'm still working on it," and finally got it across the goal line because it was a ton of work, but it's a great process. I love doing it, and I'd like to say I've gotten better at it over time. So yeah,
Cool. All right.
yeah.
Yeah, no, it's been great to be able to hear and listen. A lot of these being brought to life and dramatized. So you've done a lot of the scripts that we've covered on the show, including Dark Knight, the Julie Hickson, Tim Burton Batman '85 treatment, with impressions of Keaton and Nicholson in there. You've also done recently the Steve Englehart treatment for Batman, and most recently we collaborated. This is technically the third one, but the first to be released because it's so much shorter than the others on that, and that is the case of the Chemical Syndicate, which I'll pull up right here for that. But this was one that I definitely enjoyed working with you on. It's the first one that's been released. It was literally released maybe about a half hour to 45 minutes before we started recording this.
Yeah, so. I think it literally came out. Yeah, I think about 30 minutes ago.
Yeah, so it'll be on for a good while before for this episode comes out, but sure. It's been really cool to be able to say like, hey, like let's collaborate on these, and I have a few ideas. So this first one with Chemical Syndicate kind of came about just because of seeing the Keaton suits in the Flash trailer and being like, okay, well, what's the backstory behind that, and conceivably like what kind of prequel could you make out of that? And the easiest thing that I thought of was like, well, you just do Detective Comics 27, the case of the Chemical Syndicate, but set it in '89, and you imagine him in that suit. So
right.
I know I sent that to you, and I was like, okay, no pressure, because I know you're working on the other two, but this is what I thought would be really great, and you were gracious enough to do it. And I just heard the full thing for the first time with the full cast, and I just loved it. So check that out if you guys haven't already in the audience.
So it's like you're trying to get Audible to call you or what, man? Like, you think it's going to happen?
I'm not sure if anything like that would ever happen, but I would definitely answer that call.
Okay.
No doubt.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
And then the two others that we've been working on, well, that I wrote that Tim's been working on, really. I haven't been doing anything after I finished writing it, but maybe you'll have me do some other stuff. But it's going to be Batman '89 Shadows, which is the adaptation of the comic, the Batman '89 comic, written by Sam Hamm, and one of our other guests, Joe Quinones, did the art for that. And the other one will be Batman 3, which is my adaptation of the original early scripts of Batman Forever. So those are much, much longer than Chemical Syndicate, so you guys are going to have to be patient for those. But I'm going to have to be patient to hear him as well, but I'm sure they're going to be great. And I think for a lot of the comments I get sometimes whenever I mention your channel, a lot of times there's people who are directly asking me, like, hey, like, how can I support the project, or what can I do, or like, are you taking auditions and stuff? This is the guy to talk to right next to me. Tim's the guy to talk to. What's the best way for them to contact you for inquiries about any like voice acting stuff, or maybe other ways to, financially support what you're doing over at Neuverse?
Best thing to do right now is just reach out to me through email, neuversecreative@gmail.com. Hit me up if you have a question or you want to help in any way. Hit me up and we'll get chatting. I've had a lot of people since I've gotten started reach out to me, and one of them is in this audio drama. His name's Austin. He reached out to me a few weeks ago on Instagram actually, and was like, it's like, hey, I want to be in your next project. I'm like, okay, I'll keep that in mind. And then when this one came up, I sent him a role. I sent him some lines, and he got on it like same day. He was ready to roll. He's like, I'm all about this. And so
nice.
I hadn't even sent him. This is crazy. So I hadn't even sent him the link to the video. You're the only person I sent it to, I think. And he emailed me, I don't know, a few minutes after it came out, and was like, hey, I just listened to it. I love it. Thanks for letting me be a part of it. And so there's been a lot of great people that have been wanting to be a part of the channel and a part of the audio drama. So it's much appreciated, but definitely send me an email. Would love to chat with you and see what we can do to keep, putting out some great content.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. You heard it here. So check that out. Go to email him, neuversecreative@gmail.com, and that's Neuverse spelled Neuverse. Is there any backstory to the name, by the way?
I was just thinking that.
That's such a good question, and it's a dual thing. I wanted, for some reason, I think I had the logo before I had the name, and I wanted it to be NC. So it was a matter of like coming up with a name that was, N and C for, for the acronym. But I wanted verse somewhere in there because I wanted it to be like a multiverse kind of new verse thing where different universes of characters and stories, like, all these different versions of characters we never got. So I wanted verse in there somewhere. And so I just, what about Neuverse? Like it's a new universe. And then creative was just a means of just kind of spelling out that this is a creative venture. It's something that I'm creating and putting together. And so, yeah, that's kind of the history of the name. Nothing really super special about it. It was just trying to come up with something that I felt, had to do with what we do. So,
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a multiverse for sure, since you cover so much of the different, in terms of what we cover, like a lot of the different Batman as well, with sound alikes. And like one of my favorites is when you take an existing, movie and you do what if it was a different cast and stuff. So it's like it's Batman Begins in the style of the Batman. So it's Robert Pattinson's Batman fighting against Ra's al Ghul and stuff. So those are all really awesome. And for our listeners, and maybe I'll send you, I'm assembling playlists as well of just like, here are the Keaton adventures or the Batman 89 stuff adventures, where it would be the different ones that are related to Keaton or related to Kilmer, related to Clooney and stuff. And I'll send you the playlists and stuff. You can share it out to them, but that way sometimes they can hear it in chronological order, because I want to be able to listen to Chemical Syndicate. Selfishly, I wrote Chemical Syndicate so I could listen to that right before Ian's Batman 89 one.
You want to be issue number 1.
So, but yeah, let's segue over then into Spider-Man Operation Z, because again, this is one that you kind of introduced me to just from making this one. So how did you discover this one? Did you find it on Jim Shooter's site? Did somebody tell you that it was on Jim Shooter's site? Because I had no idea until this was made.
Yeah, I had no idea about it either. Didn't know it. I hadn't heard of it. It's not even like one of those projects where I've heard about, but just didn't have the script in hand. It was something I was totally oblivious to. And there was a guy that reached out to our channel a long while back and said, "Hey, can I send you some unproduced scripts that I have?" And I was like, yeah, of course. I won't say no to that. I wasn't sure if he had anything that I didn't have or hadn't seen, but he sent me and still sends me a bunch of stuff I've never heard of. Some of it stuff I already have, some stuff I've heard of. And this was one of them. And it came at a really good time because I had wanted to do a Spider-Man project. I'm a huge Spider-Man fan. Up to that point, I'd done a lot of Superman and Batman stuff, and I really wanted to do something Spider-Man. And I think the big one would be like James Cameron's Spider-Man, which you and I, Ben, we've talked about that. Yeah. But I wasn't at a place at the time where I was ready to tackle that one yet. So when this one hit my inbox and it said Spider-Man, I just clicked on it, kind of skimmed through it really quick, and was like, "This is cool. It's got some flaws, got some things with the story that aren't quite jiving with me, but hey, I'm just going to jump on it." So I jumped on it and adapted it and reached out to some of my voice cast that I had worked with, like Brett Solferino, who had done Batman, Michael Keaton Batman, and a lot of other voices for me, and was like, "Hey, this is in the 80s. Let's do like a Marty McFly kind of, Spider-Man. Doesn't have to be an uncanny Michael J. Fox, but just that, I
did get the Michael J. Fox vibe.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So that was like the whole thing. Like, let's set it in that time. And so he knocked out the voice for that and put that together. And I was really happy with the end result, but that's essentially how it came together.
Awesome. Yeah. It's through you that made me investigate this, because when I read the premise and listened to it, I'm just like, this is interesting considering the time, because it's some of the more famous drafts are Spider-Man versus Doc Ock, or the Cameron one, where it's like, oh, it's businessman Electro, but this is because it's written by a comic book writer. It's no surprise that he drew on comic book villains, but clearly comic book villains that they knew were going to be within budget for the time in the 80s, since we're talking about canon films where they were notoriously low budget and probably couldn't really afford the Doc Ock stuff as much as they wanted to. So I think the villain choices here would have made more sense, even if they might not have felt as exciting to the average audiences. But we'll let you guys be the judge of that. So
it looks like Craven. Somebody hunting him down.
Somebody is hunting him. You'll see.
Okay.
You'll see.
Okay.
Yes, again.
Punisher.
This is Jim Shooter, who was a Marvel editor for a long period of time and left around 87, I want to say. Let me know if there's more about Jim Shooter that I might be missing. Tim, but I think he left around 87, which is around the time he said that he wrote this.
Yeah,
So
I think that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess they were just like, hey, you're a Marvel editor, write something for us that could be Spider-Man related. We may or may not use it, or we can use it as a template for, an actual screenwriter to go off of. And so he wrote this 14-page treatment called Spider-Man Operation Z, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. So, here we go. Unlike other Spider-Man things that we've either gone over or were written at the time, we do not start with the origin. Peter Parker is already Spider-Man before the events of this, so it kind of takes a Batman 89 approach to this before Batman 89 was even released either. But it's the Sam Hamm approach, where it's just like everyone wants to see Spider-Man first, so don't make them wait too long. Right. Don't do the origin yet. So instead, we start with him already having the powers. Peter Parker, wakes up, starts his day, eats breakfast, all that type of stuff, talks to his Aunt May, and seems like everything is pretty much what you would expect out of a kid like him. But he's obviously a little different. He's able to kind of do these weird, we get to see hints or introductions of the powers. He's sticking to the walls by his fingertips. He's going, he's jumping up and down and stuff. So he's not completely, normal. There are hints at Uncle Ben, but we don't see Uncle Ben at this point. It's just mainly hints of it right now. So just kind of gradually sticking to exposition. Peter is a college student over at Empire State University, and it's clear from what they do with this that he is still, even though he's Spider-Man at this point, he's still somewhat of an outcast, somewhat of a wallflower. He gets kind of invited by this group of kids to come over for a party type of thing, and when he turns it down, he realizes that they knew he was going to turn it down, and they kind of make fun of him behind his back. And so it's the standard Peter Parker stuff, if they only knew I was Spider-Man, if they knew that I was so much cooler than what they think I am, then they wouldn't laugh at me so much, which is kind of one of the aspects of Spider-Man that I think a lot of people relate to on this. So this is kind of the setup to get us caring about the character, but Jim Shooter goes right from that to sort of introducing who the villains are when Peter is hanging out with Aunt May, and she's bringing up that the FBI is currently investigating a guy known as the Kingpin, the absolute czar of organized crime to the U.S., it says. So this to me makes a lot of sense. If you are low budget in the 80s, you might as well pick the guy who doesn't really have outright superpowers, who's a big crime boss, intimidating, but all you really need is a big guy in a white suit. Budget-wise, you don't need the tentacles, you don't need all the powers and stuff. So, to me, that makes a lot of sense at this time. And I think this might have been around the same. Yeah, this was a little bit earlier before they put Kingpin in Trial of the Incredible Hulk, which I still haven't seen yet. But I think that's the first live-action Kingpin. Have you seen that one, Tim?
I have not seen that. No.
That's the first. That's the first Kingpin and first Daredevil in live action. It's on Tubi right now, apparently. So,
is it really?
Yeah,
oh, wow.
I got to check that out, actually. John Rhys Davies as Kingpin. Sala himself from Indiana Jones. Yeah.
No way. Okay.
Wow.
That's cool.
It's a deep cut there, but he was the first Kingpin before Michael Clark Duncan and, obviously now Vincent D'Onofrio. Right. So I don't think he would have been the choice for this specific version, but he is, he's gone down in history as the first live action one. So that's pretty cool. So Peter basically does this change of costume in an alley, which we would end up seeing many years later for the first time on film in Spider-Man Homecoming, because I don't really remember him changing in an alley in the Maguire or Garfield films. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but I think that's one of the aspects of Homecoming that a lot of people appreciate was sort of this homemade sometimes or, street aspect to it, which, is still contrasted with how high-tech the suit was, but that's a whole other debate. But yeah, he changes into being Spider-Man. We see him fight crime on it, while at the same time he's taking pictures because he still has to try to get money off of these photos to make rent and make ends meet and stuff. So police are still kind of wary of Spider-Man at this point. And we can also see in the Ditko art here the big armpit wings, the web wings over here. I just noticed this. So this is a good call, Dan, on these images. But yeah, pretty standard Spider-Man stuff, and of course he's going to sell those to Jameson. In the meantime, though, we meet Kingpin for the first time. Classic stuff. He is, quote-unquote, a huge man who appears to be fat, but is solid like a sumo wrestler, wearing classy evening clothes. Standard Kingpin stuff. But the robbery that Spider-Man stopped was apparently part of his big operation called Operation Z, which we don't know that much about, but he decides that if Spider-Man's going to interfere with his operation, he has to find somebody to fight Spider-Man, so he orders his head assassin, and this is the reason why there's the sniper rifle, Andrew, his head assassin, Bullseye.
Oh,
so this is interesting, though, because Bullseye's typically a Daredevil villain. But, again, I think if you don't have a huge budget, you got a guy in a business suit, and then you got another guy who just throws things really well and deadly. That's a lot simpler than some of the other villains. It does describe Bullseye as a vicious-looking guy who wears dark clothes with sort of a military cut, including a black leather-like jacket. So it's kind of a foreshadowing of Colin Farrell and Daredevil, honestly. That's what it says, because he's not in the Bullseye suit. I'm sure you noticed that, too, when you were going through this, Tim.
Yeah.
He's... they don't have the standard thing. He is called Bullseye, but they never say that he's in like an outright costume for it.
Yeah. Yep.
So,
I always thought this was one of the goofiest looking villains. I mean, no offense to Colin Farrell, but man, I suppose the comic book fans that grew up reading a lot of Bullseye wanted something like this, but
just looks he doesn't look like this in the comics, though.
Oh, he doesn't? Okay. See, I didn't even know that. I've never really read a whole lot of Spider-Man or Daredevil.
What do you feel is the most ridiculous part? Is it the jacket or is it the forehead? Because to me, it's the forehead.
It's the forehead.
Yes, the forehead.
What else would it be?
I wasn't really sure. Or was it a combination of both?
The rest of him is normal. Fairly normal.
Hey, instead of the cowl, we think it's more realistic for it to look like he carved the bullseye into his head.
What is it in the comics again? He's
in a Daredevil type suit, but instead of the horns on his head, it's the target on his forehead.
Oh, it's a Daredevil type of suit. So what color is it?
Well, it's blue, but I say it's a Daredevil type of suit because it's like a leotard type of thing.
Oh, okay, yeah, I got you.
But it's not like a doppelganger type thing, like in the Netflix show where he was posing as Daredevil and stuff. Like, it's not one of those things where they're both drawn the same way. Like, it's very clearly Daredevil's in red and Bullseye's in like dark blue, almost black, with the white target thing.
If it's your first episode listening, guys, I learn with the audience, so I know some stuff, but not everything.
We'll have some of the art, I think, from the comic on this, but I specifically asked Dan to pull up the Colin Farrell one since he's described like the bullseye that's in the movie.
Okay, yeah, I got it. That's cool. That's fine.
We also get Vanessa in this. So Kingpin's wife, Vanessa, is in this, which I thought was really cool because, I mean, not really... You wouldn't think. I just didn't expect the 80s version of this to try to add this much depth to Kingpin, like we would see in the Netflix show. But the components were there earlier on, and Shooter obviously knows the comics, and so he's just carrying over what's in the comics here. But we have the whole aspect with Vanessa of she doesn't want him to be part of this life, but Kingpin says he's got this one last job, Operation Z, and then he'll be out. So
it's not always the case. I'm out of letters, Z. It's the last one. That'll be it. It's also just great to see a picture of MCU's greatest villain once again.
Yes, of course. coming easily back too. Yes,
easily the MCU's greatest villain. Mm-hmm. I will not be taking questions at this time.
It is great, and I forgot. I forgot the actor's name who did Kingpin in yours, but. Did you basically, for the Operation Z audio drama, did you give hints on a type of act, a D'Onofrio to emulate, or a different actor, or just have him do his own take on Kingpin?
Yeah, I actually reached out to a guy named AJ Carter, who he had done a lot of stuff for me up to that point, but he's mostly known for doing Nick Cage Superman for us.
Ah, okay.
And the reason I love AJ is because he's such a profound voice actor, and he puts a lot of just heart and soul into his performances. It just goes beyond the script, and he's just really good. And Kingpin wasn't really in his wheelhouse. I just wanted like this really deep kind of commandeering voice. And when I sent it to him, he was like, I'm not sure that this is for me. And I said, no, that's okay. Just do it. Just perform it the way that you would. And then in post-production, I'll deepen your voice. And I pitch shifted his voice down several steps to get it down to a lower register. Cool. And I was really happy with the final result. I wasn't going for any particular performance. I just wanted AJ to have kind of full reign, and I really liked what he did. I was happy with it, and that's kind of how we approached it.
Oh, that's awesome. I had no idea. I
Yeah.
couldn't tell that it was pitched down. I just thought he was doing, a Kingpin voice.
Yeah.
So it's a good testament to the editing there.
That's cool.
And his performance on that.
Yeah.
I was curious about that. But yeah, awesome. We also meet, of course, another mainstay in the Spider-Man universe. This is J. Jonah Jameson, though it would not have been J.K. Simmons at the time, unfortunately. But we get the standard stuff. It says Jameson is not crusty but good-hearted. He's cheap and petty. Not very nice, though he's a hell of a newspaper man. So pretty much what we would expect from this character. But yeah, it says he belittles, berates, and abuses Parker. His hatred of costume vigilantes like Spider-Man is evident too. He admonishes Parker to seek photos relating to the Kingpin. All right, so we'll see how well he does with that. Peter then goes to the bank because he's going to deposit the money for the pictures, and his spider sense starts to tingle, and he realizes that there's a bunch of people, there's a bunch of robbers there who are there to rob the bank. So they do endanger one of the other citizens there, who's a girl named Lynn. And this is interesting to me. So Lynn is going to be the main female lead and love interest to Peter in this. This is an original character, which is also interesting. Unless I'm wrong on the original character. Tim, correct me if there's a Lynn that I just missed.
No, as far as I know, it's a completely original character. And in fact, I think one of the things I was reading, because I was doing a little bit of research on this before I produced the audio drama, and there's very, very, I'm sure as you could tell, there's not a whole lot of information about it out there. One of the things I read is maybe this was just observation, but I think it's suspected that love interest probably would have changed to a more familiar one, and that's just what she was called in the treatment. So maybe it wouldn't have been Lynn if they would have pursued the script further. Maybe they would have changed it to a different character, but I kept it as Lynn because I didn't want to assume that wasn't going to be the case. So Lynn it is.
Yeah. I hear you. Sometimes as well with adaptation or adapting something that's already like a pre-existing script, I'm just like, well, I feel like this is a version of this character, but do I just name it after the comic version or do I name it after the script version? And sometimes I just abide by the script version because I'm like, well, people are expecting an adaptation of the script, so I'll keep it with that. So I agree with your decision there too. But yeah, it's interesting too because Jim Shooter is a comic book writer and comic editor, so you would think that he would just stick to MJ or Gwen Stacy or Betty Brant or one of the girlfriends. In the past. So it could be one where it was dictated to him like, hey, we're not sure which one to pick, so just kind of give a random name to her and we'll just insert. They probably didn't have find and replace at that point, but we'll find and replace the name and replace Lynn with whatever character we want on that. But that's kind of how it feels like. But essentially, Peter does help fight off the robbers and save Lynn, and this is where the sparks fly between the two of them. However, Lynn does ask Peter out to coffee. Peter does have to check with his Aunt May first because he did have plans with her. And I guess when he's talking to Aunt May, Lynn kind of gets cold feet because she's not sure what she's getting into, maybe because of how attached he is to his aunt. But she kind of runs off here, and we kind of go on this tangent, it feels, where Peter kind of chases after her and chases her through like the rooftops, all this stuff just to catch up to her. And eventually return because she leaves her silk scarf behind, and so he's trying to retrieve the scarf and get it back to her, and also rekindle what they had. But it also says that he's angry, and his anger makes him more determined and reckless. So I thought that was an interesting note. But they do end up dating together, and we kind of have sort of a montage type of thing, is what described. It looks like of her sort of finding Peter to be more and more mysterious. He's like such a science nerd, but he's also got the body of an Olympic gymnast. How does that work? It didn't seem like he's interested in sports. So that's just to develop more and more of that relationship. But he is running out of money, and so he decides that he's got to get more photos of himself as Spider-Man. So he goes out there, finds yet again more robbers, men loading up trucks in front of a waterfront warehouse. But this is where he encounters Bullseye himself, and this is the comic book version. So you can see kind of similar to Daredevil.
I now that I see this, I've seen this and similar stuff to this. I just couldn't. I could only think of Colin Farrell for a moment with that picture on screen.
I did show that picture. Familiar. Of Colin Farrell, yeah.
So they were trying to be like '90s edgy in the early 2000s with a scar on his head.
Right. Yeah.
That's all that was.
In this treatment, they only say he's got the long leather jacket. They don't say anything about the scar on his head. That's definitely from the Daredevil movie. But obviously that's became such a striking image.
This would have been Canon Films, right? So they didn't even have a budget for more than one suit, probably.
Probably.
They just got the one Spider-Man.
Yeah, the Spider-Man suit, and then something that looks nice on the Kingpin for a white suit, and then Bullseye just gets whatever. He's a henchman.
Yeah.
But as far as custom suits, like it's Spider-Man. That's it.
Oh yeah,
we're Canon. Much. So there it is, everybody.
Yeah, so this is where we get the Bullseye Spider-Man fight, which is pretty cool. Spider-Man Spider-Sense saves his life, warning him about an ambush from everybody. And, Bullseye never misses, but Spider-Man's kind of impossible to hit. But he does manage to hit him, winging him with some sort of dart that has a deadly nerve poison in it. So, Spider-Man is as good as dead. What's going to happen to him? We'll find out after the break. All right, everyone, it's time for our July announcements. We got a bunch of other new things on the way, or already recorded. So, let's start with this. We have the 89 logo up here, because for those who missed it, I was on the show Table Read Tuesdays, where we read the Sam Hamm script from 1986 for the Batman 89 movie. I couldn't reveal who I was playing the last time we announced this, but since it's already come and gone, I was the voice of Batman. Woo! So I got to finally read that role. It was an awesome experience. I got my own Vicky Vale, got my own Joker to fight against, my own Robin even. But, it's also a script where there are long instances where Batman is doing stuff and doesn't say anything. So it was really easy for me compared to everyone else, especially compared to Kat, the narrator, who was the MVP of that, with reading through all the action description. But check that out at the Table Read Tuesdays YouTube page that we'll have on the link below. And it is 5 hours long, FYI, so we don't expect you to go through all that, because there's a lot of, there's so much action description that it's not the same length as a movie when we go through all that. And the final hour alone is just on, an analysis and discussion on the differences between this and the movie itself. So check that out if you want. And in the meantime, both Andrew and I, as we've talked about before, are in a movie. We're in Jeffrey Scott Richards' movie, Derek Magnum. We recently saw the finished edit of it. It's great. We are in it, of course. It's great because we're in it. No, it's great regardless whether or not we're in it. But please help us out, or help them out, really, because this does not go to us. There's a GoFundMe set up for the Derek Magnum production costs, and a lot of it goes towards submitting it to festivals, which is where, Jeffrey's sending it, and we are executive producers on the movie. So if you are a part of that and want to help out, you will be basically helping us become executive producers on potentially an award-winning movie in these festivals. So
Indeed.
That's exciting.
Yes, thank you for including us, Derek, and it's awesome. Please check it out, everybody, and please try to help him out with production costs. Plus, the submitting to festivals, man, it ain't cheap.
Nope.
That's a whole other deal, dude.
Yes.
So please check that out if you can.
Another announcement coming up. So I have a couple creative things. Andrew has a couple creative things, so I'll start with mine. My first scripted podcast for the audio drama channel Neuverse Creative. That is coming up soon, if it has not been already by the time this gets released. And it is not one that we've announced before. This has been kept secret until now, but I can finally reveal this. It's going to be Batman 89, Case of the Chemical Syndicate. This is an adaptation of the very first Batman story, Detective Comics number 27, by Bill Finger, but written as a prequel to Batman 89. And also, as you can see in this thumbnail by Tim over at Neuverse Creative, it is inspired by the Caped Crusader suit that we broke down in our episode where we went through all the different Keaton suits. So that's why that's there. Though
you wrote it?
I did, yeah.
Okay,
so I wrote,
cool.
I adapted this. It's basically a faithful adaptation of Detective Comics number 27, but I injected a little something in there that you guys are going to have to listen to that makes it connect to the movie, the 89 movie. Though if you subscribe to the idea that Keaton's Batman in The Flash is a different version from his in Batman 89, let's keep in mind, guys, this is audio. So you can just envision him in whatever suit you want. If you want to envision him in the Batman 89 suit, cool. If you want to, put this insane continuity as Johnny K's The Oath movie, maybe he's in that Batman Returns style prototype that he wore. That it's up to you, because this is what I love about doing these. It's audio, so you can envision whatever the hell you want when it comes to the designs of these suits. So that I'm excited about that. It's my first release collaboration with Neuverse on that. And if this does well, maybe we'll take a crack at some other ones that explain those Keaton suits for there. But when you check that out, you may also hear a familiar voice in the story as one of the villains. So that is on the way, or has already been released, depending on when that gets out. And lastly, to continue updating people, I have more art to share on the upcoming comic of mine, Alter Ego, which is basically Game of Thrones supervillains, where 5 families of villains rule over the wasteland of a post-apocalyptic city. I introduced you last time to the first 3 families. This is the head of the 4th family, the Gatekeeper. Think of him as Aquaman on land. He can communicate with all the surviving zoo animals to protect the borders of the city and ensure no one gets in or out, hence the Gatekeeper. So as you can see here, he's got a lion as an enforcer, as well as a bird who informs him of everything that happens. And that cane is nothing to, be afraid of the cane, is all I'm going to say on that. So this is what we got. And over to Andrew on your stuff.
Okay, so if you've listened to the podcast for a long time, this project used to be called Amino Recon. We've changed that to what we think is a better name, and it's now called Metal Force. Okay, and we're going to have a booth where we're promoting the Kickstarter that's going to be running for Metal Force at Japan World Heroes Convention. That's the name of the convention, and that's August 18th to 20th. And that's at the Burbank Marriott Convention Center in Los Angeles. We might be selling some trinkets too. So some small stuff, nothing crazy. And just kind of like promoting our project and trying to get funding while at the convention. So check it out. And also please check out www.metalforce.ninja. That is our URL, and you can see the campaign video there, and just the whole pitch and everything for Metal Force is there, and it's R-rated Power Rangers meets Stranger Things. That's my elevator pitch for it. It's not a fan film, but it does have strong inspiration from those two things. So it's a horror comedy movie. So there it is. Please check it out. And that's it for that one, Ben.
Nice. And lastly, we have our charity for this month.
Okay.
To be for Hope for the Day.
Hope for the Day is a non-profit movement empowering the conversation on proactive suicide prevention through action, outreach, and education. By educating ourselves and our communities on the basics of mental health, we can create strong peer support networks to assist those experiencing mental health challenges. When we provide accessible resources for mental health and social services, we can save lives. And especially if you look at our when we look at our YouTube analytics, we're like over 99% men. And not to say that it's obviously doesn't matter about gender, but there's something about men not talking about their mental problems. I'll say that. Like, dudes don't talk about emotions and feelings and shit. So if I can talk to 99% of our audience, like, please go seek help and talk to these people, or the suicide prevention hotline as well. Because Ben, have you ever had anybody commit suicide in your life?
Yes.
And I have as well. A lot of people have this experience, which really fucking sucks. So, this is what we're talking about this month, and Hope for the Day is our charity. So please check them out. Just wanted to announce that I have a new podcast called Gaming Gaiden. It's about Japanese to English translation. In this first season, it will be 10 episodes each season. If you saw the ranking, every Superman video game two-parter we did here on Superhero Stuff You Should Know, you have seen Mike before. So yes, if you like video games, if you've been interested in Japanese ever, we're going to be talking a lot about just Japan in general, Japanese cultural differences as well, and we also are going to have a lot of talk about 90s video game magazines such as Electronic Gaming Monthly, aka EGM. So stay tuned for Gaming Gaiden podcast. It's already out now, y'all. I wanted to tell you about the Patreon.com. Patreon.com/superherostuffpod, and on that you get the $1 tier. You can join the $1 tier, which gets you the shout out on the board, and either visually or orally, or both at times. We want to do the oral for the most part for newer people. And then the $5 tier gets you a whole new show. This show is every Monday, as you well know, and it's free on YouTube and the What's Nots. And the Patreon show is every Friday at the $5 tier mark. You can, if you want, binge us for $5, and there's like 150 episodes, almost 150 at this point, and you can listen to all that content there. Even the stuff that's been released from the vault, none of that has been the full episode as well. So trying to keep our $5 tier people happy. But yeah, check that out. And then our $10 tier gets you all of the above, plus it gets you a monthly meetup show where you meet up with us monthly, and it's like a Zoom-like call, and we have a topic at hand, or sometimes videos we react to and things like that. And that's at the $10 tier. Every tier that you get, like the $5 tier gets you the $1 tier benefits, and the $10 tier gets you the $5 tier benefits and the $1 tier benefits. So check that out at patreon.com/superherostuffpod. We also got the merch, which is Redbubble, superhousepod.redbubble.com, and on Threadless, superherostuffpod.threadless.com. Get your Bin Man and Indeed Wizard mug, shirt, shower curtains, and all the rest artwork by Stephen Santa Cruz. And please send us some audio at superhousepodcast@gmail.com. A bumper would be great. You too can be part of the show. I'm Thunderwolf Drew on Instagram and Twitter. Thunderwolf Lives is my other YouTube channel, one of my many YouTube channels. And I have also thunderwolfdrew.com has my whole portfolio in one place, except for amanorecon.com. That's AMANORECON.com. And that is an original idea that some friends and I are doing, where it is R-rated Power Rangers meets Stranger Things. That's the quick pitch, and it is not a fan film, original idea. We have a pitch video right now on YouTube and on the Indiegogo page. We're campaigning right now as of this, when this episode premieres. And this poster art is by ZacharyJacksonBrownArt.com. And check it out. Please support us on the campaign. And more from that soon. But yes, it's bloody, and if you like that kind of thing, check us out. And that's it, Ben.
Follow us on social media, on Twitter at SuperhousePod, Instagram Superhero Stuff Pod, where we have some different supplemental stuff. I've even analyzed the martial arts stance that the Keaton ornament from The Flash is in, so you can check that out on our Instagram, Superhero Stuff Pod. TikTok, Superhero Stuff Pod, Vero, Superhero Stuff Pod. My website is benwanwriter.com, where you can read a whole bunch of spec scripts, including Gotham, Vampire, Elementary, The Death of Sherlock Holmes, and Curb Your Enthusiasm, Disneyland. If you're fans of any of those shows, check them out and let us know what you think. My YouTube channel is in the description below, including Doctor Who, The Ronin of Time, an audio drama I write, edit, and narrate with the 8th Doctor, meeting Miyamoto Musashi. My personal Instagram is benwanwriter. If you like cats, my son, Alfie, my cat, is at Alfie Pennyworth Cat. And if you have an Alfie yourself, then you can get the Whisker Box, the only cat box with a crazy cat lady, and gent. And you can even check out another page on that website, superherostuffpod.com/show notes. That includes various show notes for each of our episodes, links to the scripts that we review if they're available online, Amazon links to the stuff we've been talking about, including, Brian Levant's book that he plugged for us, My Life and Toys. So check that out at superherostuffpod.com/show notes.
Lord have mercy, y'all. Do you like hounds? Do you enjoy pooches? Do you find yourself enjoying time spent with that of canines? Talking about dogs, y'all.
As you might have heard, Superhero Stuff You Should Know has now teamed up with BarkBox. For every month, you get a box for your special canine.
Pooches.
Or hounds.
That's right. One free extra month if you go to barkbox.com/superherostuffpod.
Follow the link and you'll get a free extra month valued at $35 and valid for all multi-length plans.
So get the BarkBox for your hound, for your pooch, for your canine.
Your doggo will thank you.
Buttermilk pancakes.
And we're back. But is Spider-Man? We're going to find out. So Spider-Man's been hit by Bullseye's hypothermic dart with deadly nerve poison. He's trying to figure out what he's going to do. Obviously, he's not feeling so hot at this moment. So he does try to go to Lynn because in stopping the criminals, he has missed Lynn's birthday. And she obviously has no idea what her boyfriend has been doing. He knocks on her apartment, but she feels so angry that he stood her up that she ignores him. Does not realize he's basically literally dying on her doorstep, but you can't blame her because she doesn't know. So Spider-Man does try to go into try to seek help and does end up getting help from a local doctor who kind of basically patches him up a little bit and brings up to the fact that, hey, like due to your metabolism, due to the spider abilities that he has, he pretty much was able to survive throughout of all of this. It's because of the fact that he's Spider-Man that he could survive. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to. It's a dose that, quote unquote, surely would have killed an elephant. So here's what's weird, and this might have been one of the. I know, Tim, you said it's not perfect. There's flaws in this. This is something that really weirded me out. So it says Spider-Man thanks the doctor nonetheless, especially since he apparently didn't remove the mask. Spider-Man leaves. Then the doctor opens a drawer and pulls out a Polaroid of Peter Parker's face, which he took while Parker was unconscious. He admires the photo. He, of course, has no idea who this person is, nor does he know anything about him. He also has no intentions of doing anything if it is just a souvenir. This felt really weird to me.
Very weird. And it's obviously a device for what's going to happen later in the story.
Yes.
Otherwise, it is absolutely pointless. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It just, I was like, this is kind of weirdly creepy.
Yes.
I think it's supposed to be like, oh, like a kind of a nice moment, but now I'm just like, it doesn't read like a nice moment to me. It seems weird. This is better off with us not knowing that happened and just us thinking that the doctor, respected Spider-Man enough not to take off the mask. But right. As Tim hinted at, it does play a role later on in the story, as you can imagine. So
I would say cut it already, but if it syncs up with something else, I'm excited to hear that.
They would need to find a different way. That's all I'm going to say. We'll
it still sucks, huh? Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
The weird thing is, it's like that there was some comic or something where they revealed who it was, and it was like, I have no idea who this is. Like that was the joke for some meme or whatever. And that sounds like this is like, even if you look at them, especially in the 80s with no internet, like I have no idea who the fuck this is. So the picture... Mm-hmm. Can't be scanned and put on the internet or anything either. So I don't know. Yeah, it's just interesting to think about.
Personal collection.
Yeah, it's a little bit serial killery. It's a little bit. It's a little bit weird, man. It's probably something you should usually avoid.
Yes.
Anyway.
So we'll workshop it when we get to that point. It is. I'm sure, Tim. There are parts too where you're adapting something and it's just like, all right, this is weird, but I have to adapt this because the promise is I'm adapting this treatment. So.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because even sometimes the vocabulary that's used, especially in some of these older scripts, especially like from the 80s, some of the words they use literally make no sense or aren't really used today. And so, in fact, my mom is like a walking dictionary. So sometimes I'll call her or I'll be talking to her, hey, I'm working on this script. What the heck does this word mean? And she's like, oh, this means, yeah, we don't really use that word anymore, huh? And so it's really funny. Sometimes there's certain things that have to change just to actually make it make sense. But yeah, you're right. There's other things I can't just take it out. It's part of the story,
Yeah.
Can you remember any of those weird, antiquated words at the moment?
There was one, not from this one, but I was working on one earlier, and the word was bristle, and I think in the context it was like someone was ticked, like they were ticked off, they were bothered. Yeah, like I was bristled by this situation. I'm like, who says that? So like, okay, we're gonna change that first. We're gonna switch that out for something else.
Yeah, I ran into some of that too with Chemical Syndicate because I'm adapting a comic from 1939, so not all the dialogue is necessarily going to match up very well.
A lot of racial slurs and whatnot.
Well, that wasn't in the Chemical Syndicate one because I don't think it would be as reprinted as it is now. But yeah, there was. I know Tim and we were talking about, like, in the narration, I just carried over Bill Finger saying, like, Batman lashed out with a terrific right, and Tim's like, is that correct? And I'm like, oh yeah, sorry, that's the narration from the 1939 one. You can revise that if you want, but you kept it.
Right, I did. I just decided to keep it because you had a good idea. Just either change it or leave it and have the sound effect come right in, with it or after it. And it makes sense what it is. And so I was like, I'm just going to leave it the way you wrote it. And yeah.
It just sounds like old-timey boxing narration or something.
It's a tribute to Bill Finger. Because I was like, look, it's an adaptation to Chemical Syndicate. Finger's got the narration, so like unless it's so old-timey, it doesn't make any sense. I'll do what I can to try to keep parts of it. But yeah, there were a few other instances there where I'm just like, he doesn't need to say, or even my line as Jennings, I was just like, Tim, I'm just going to change a little bit of it. I have permission from the writer to do so.
You have permission, yeah.
Because I wrote it, but yeah, I was like, okay, it's a little weird now that I hear it out loud. So it's what happens when you adapt something that's really old.
There was some, again, like a Captain America comic or something where he says, give me the straight dick, Tony. Something like that. Because the straight dick used to mean like the straight story, like the the actual story or whatever. Mm-hmm. But just the straight dick.
Of course, they always use those in the memes.
It's fucking great.
It's amazing, yeah. All right, so Peter does go to Lynn's apartment. And here's something that I really appreciated because of how often we see the back and forth between not trying to reveal the secret identity. But Peter just outright is just like, hey, you know what? To save my relationship and because I trust you, I'm just going to tell you I'm Spider-Man. Again, I found this refreshing. So he explains everything, and it also says he explains his origin, period, flashback, period. She's more stunned. And that's all we get. So presumably this is the flashback with the whole I was bitten by a radioactive spider. Maybe stuff with Uncle Ben. I'm not sure, because all it says is he explains his origin, flashback. But I would assume it's mostly Amazing Fantasy, number 15, being adapted at that point. But that's where we would get this. But she explained she was so upset about being stood up, being a liberated lady, because she'd planned to propose to him 2 nights ago on her birthday. He's stunned, of course. That's all changed now, but like hell it is, she sinks to one knee and asks Peter for his spider hand, spider strong hand in marriage.
Oh, man.
But considering how much bad luck Peter gets in romance, like I kind of appreciated aspects of this anyway. It is a little weird in terms of how quickly it seems that he's revealing this to a character we're not even familiar with from the comics. But again, if this were to be fleshed out in a screenplay, I'm sure she would have been more fleshed out, or potentially, like Tim said, changed to Mary Jane or Betty Brant or someone else. So that's kind of how I reasoned with it. We do go to Kingpin's headquarters where they do bring to life, this is something I thought was really cool, the image from Frank Miller's Daredevil run where Kingpin is just having a lively workout by beating up a bunch of his men in gis with a pair of nunchucks in his hands. So
I want to say D'Onofrio with nunchucks now.
Yes. That would be awesome.
That's probably going to happen in the new one coming
Maybe.
up.
Yeah.
Maybe.
But yeah, he's talking to Bullseye. They're worried because Spider-Man, if he survived, he now can stop Operation Z. So basically, Bullseye has to promise Kingpin that he is going to kill Spider-Man for good. So Bullseye is going to be on the hunt for Spider-Man, and meanwhile, Vanessa visits Kingpin. Again, the same stuff as before. She doesn't want him to be part of this life. The same stuff that we're kind of used to. But she is planning to leave the country and take him with her. And he can't because Operation Z is still in effect. So she kind of gives him an ultimatum. It says, quote, "Though she loves him, she'll be on a plane tonight. If he isn't with her, he'll never see her again. He pleads, she's firm, she leaves. He's beside himself, but he must finish this." So, again, adding some depth to the Kingpin that I wouldn't have expected during this time period. So Peter's developing photos from the other night as Lynn looks on. They're worthless now because they're all old news in terms of Peter stopping a crime from many nights ago. But Spider-Man, of course, wants to investigate what's going on with this nerve poisoning stuff. And Lynn thinks it's crazy what he does as Spider-Man. So here's kind of what we get in terms of the main conflict between him and his girlfriend. She thinks he could do something much safer with his abilities, like win the entire Olympics or become a star athlete and make enough money for, supporting himself and Aunt May. And so to test out this theory, this is a whole other tangent this story goes on to. They go to the New York Knicks and have Peter try out and practice with them. And,
oh my God, this would have been not my thing. Nerds and sports, we love it.
Yes.
I know they're sports nerds, but I don't know. This wouldn't have been for me.
On the show, yeah. It says Peter, who doesn't understand basketball and is sheepish about showing off even part of his powers, bumbles through a series of idiot comic mistakes as he tries to prove his worth. They make fun of him, but then he gets pissed, and then he uses his spider powers to make all these leaps and basically annihilate everybody on the court. And now everybody wants him on their team. I don't like it. Through the microphone, through my headphones.
Do not like it for some reason. It's like Space Jam before there was Space Jam.
Well, it's also just a big tangent too. I mean, how did you feel about this when adapting it, Tim?
When I first read it, when I first got to that part of the treatment, I almost kind of laughed out loud. Like, what the heck? Like, I was like, is this for real? Mm-hmm. But there was a part of it that I liked. And what it was, well, first of all, I didn't like Lynn's character at all. I'll just say mm-hmm. that. I didn't like her at all. I thought she was annoying. And, it was kind of like, if they ever made this movie, hopefully she would have got killed off in a sequel or something. Because I didn't like her disdain for Peter Parker being Spider-Man. You should be supporting him and him wanting to be a hero. But there's this element of, if you have these powers, I mean, it's got to at least cross your mind that, especially if you are a nerd, like you're saying, Andrew, and you have no skill in sports. I have no skill in sports whatsoever. But if I have all
it was
these
laughable,
powers,
dude. Growing up in school, it was sad, bro.
Yeah.
It was sad to even look at me, bro. Back then, especially.
Yeah. But it's like, if you have these powers, it's got to cross your mind at least once. Hey, now I can play sports and no one's going to laugh at me. You know what I mean? And
it's true. It's true.
Yeah. And I do like the scene where at first everyone's laughing at him because he doesn't know what he's doing, but that kind of pisses him off. And he says, forget it. I'm going all in. And even though he still doesn't really understand the game, he knows how to jump. He knows how to dodge people using his spidey sense. And he does all that and he shows everyone off. And when I adapted it and I was editing it, I had this idea of, once he hits that first dunk, that this rock track just hits in. And sometimes I hear something in my head, but then when I do it, it doesn't quite work. But this was one of them where I felt like it did. Mm-hmm. And even when I listened to it earlier, actually, just to hear it again and prepare for the episode, I was like, I really dig that part. Like, you hear the swoosh of the basketball and the hoop, and then bam, this cool rock track comes in, and I can visualize the movie. And I think it would have been a cool scene. It would have been maybe quirky and maybe laughed at in some regard. Mm-hmm. But I think it would have had its moment, though.
I think it's just so, it puts you too much in the limelight if you're trying to be, wear a full mask and have an alias and whatever, and kind of hide. You know what I mean? That's why it doesn't work for me. Now, to call out my own contradiction, for Peter to be out in the open like this with the New York Knicks, my God, you know what I mean? So I just think
well, you're absolutely right, Andrew, because this is going to get him in trouble here in probably just a couple of pages or so. So
okay.
You're absolutely right on point with that. Yeah. So you're right. Yeah.
So I don't I'm going to call it my own contradiction here too. Again, I did grow up skateboarding in late high school, mid to late, so I started that. And Andrew Garfield skateboards in the movie. There's some like quick montage shots, and I did think that was cool because the skateboarding involves a lot of dynamic movement more than regular sports does, and sports do. And he was like sticking on the half pipe or some shit when he fell off. I don't know. It kind of like he was on the half. It's just like him wall crawling and doing half pipe shit. That just kind of worked for me, especially in a quick montage. We didn't stay there very long. He's just having fun with this power skateboarding. So, but him trying out for like a mate for the NBA, it's just like, what the fuck, man? Anyway, we can move on.
There is real quick before we do, like there is a quick aspect too of like, well, he did try to use his powers for sports when he does the whole wrestling thing that we saw in
that's true.
The Raven movie, but that's when he was masked. You know,
as an alias or whatever.
That was an alias. That was before he was using his powers for, for good. At that point, he hadn't learned the responsibility, the harsh responsibility lesson that he would learn. So I think maybe Shooter's trying to do a similar thing for a different reason. Beforehand that was just like, using your powers responsibly to help other people. This is more like, okay, this is the temptation of Peter Parker to use his powers for, glory and money and not necessarily to help other people. And, Lynn sort of represents that voice telling him, hey, just do this because it's safer for you. Which, I agree to Tim's point. It does make her more unlikable in this, even if it does come from a place of love. But ultimately, she kind of gives him sort of an ultimatum. She tells him it's either he gives up the Spider-Man thing, or literally, she says he gives up the Spider-Man crap, it says in this. So if she says it like that, she definitely comes off more and more.
This is an old trope that goes back to Superman and Lois, Golden Age and Silver Age, I believe, maybe even after that. And it was always the women. This is the way they wrote them, not how they really were, okay?
Yeah.
But it's the way they wrote them that was just like, I wish you weren't a superhero and stayed home and did a normal job, blah, 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 blah. And they've changed that over the years, thank God, because it made them so fucking unlikable. I know they're trying to play up the drama between him and like the hero and the girl, but like that's not the drama I want played up. I do not give a fuck. I remember in Arrow, she says like go get him or whatever. Like Felicity is like never, for the most part, what I remember anyway, never really against him doing hero shit and
not against him doing that stuff. No,
it's an antiquated trope. And I think it's kind of been gone since probably, I don't know, late to mid 90s. And hopefully it'll stay that way.
Yeah, and it's kind of, you can see in a lot of the Spider-Man movies where they've changed it. Emma Stone is helping out Andrew Garfield, and Zendaya is helping out Tom Holland.
Yeah. They don't give a fuck. They help out now. Yeah.
Okay, so she leaves him. She leaves Spider-Man. He cries. This is Tobey Maguire. That leads to more memes, just like in Spider-Man 3. He has a lot of the gifts of Tobey Maguire crying come from that movie. But
I was crying too.
Yeah, there's a knock on his door. He rushes to open it, covering the distance in a single leap, thinking it may be Lynn, but no one's there. Instead, it is a note saying that they have kidnapped both his aunt and his fiancée, and if he wants to see them alive again, Spider-Man has better come to this address in an hour. So they know that Peter Parker has a connection to Spider-Man because he's the one who does all the photos. So they've kidnapped Aunt May and they've kidnapped Lynn to get to him. And Bullseye has done the kidnapping and delivers them to Kingpin. And we get the exposition here. So this is where the Doctor actually comes in. So Bullseye finds the Doctor who had the Polaroid, the creepy-ass Polaroid of Peter Parker. Bullseye buys the Polaroid from him and spends thousands of man-hours searching through university files and other places till he finally spots Parker's photos in the sports page as a free agent for the Knicks. So there we go. That puts together the Doctor thing and the basketball thing. I think there are much easier ways for Bullseye to figure out how Peter Parker is Spider-Man if we were to rewrite this. But that's just how it is in this specific one. So that's why these are, important to the story overall. Kingpin is not a fan of Bullseye, being this harsh to the women, so he offers the ladies tea, which of course Aunt May accepts. Aunt May is not really certain what's going on. I guess they're taking advantage of the fact that she's like 70 in this, so it says that she's not quite certain what's going on. She thinks the Kingpin is a charming gentleman. So,
well, he is to certain people for sure.
Yeah, and he is to her. So
100%, yeah.
That makes sense.
Charmed the pants off it. Well, not literally.
Well, not literally, but yes. So Spider-Man arrives to fight Bullseye. He threatens to snap Bullseye's neck like a twig, he grabs Bullseye, threatening to snap his neck like a twig should anyone else move, because he's demanding the release of Aunt May and Lynn. Bullseye and Spider-Man get into another fight, like we see here. Again, there's the image of the Bullseye costume and stuff. But we essentially get, this is the third act around here. So Spider-Man fights off Bullseye and makes his way over to Kingpin, and then has another fight with Kingpin himself, which of course is not that easy of a fight because Kingpin is huge and super strong. Yes, the nunchucks do come out here, Andrew.
Yes, that's all I want in my life now.
So Kingpin with his nunchucks versus Spider-Man, which is pretty insane. Then Bullseye arrives, and here's what was weird to me, because I guess it's kind of planted subtly, but it says Bullseye wants to get rid of both Kingpin and Spider-Man at this point. I think he's just fed up with getting orders from Kingpin. So he tries to shoot both of them with a machine gun. He also ends up missing, thanks to Spider-Man breaking free of Kingpin. And Kingpin takes the opportunity of Spider-Man's back being turned to whack him with the nunchucks, stunning Spider-Man. Kingpin then rips out a support pillar, which brings a huge part of the concrete structure down on Spider-Man, apparently crushing him. This becomes very important later. And then Kingpin knows that Bullseye tried to kill him, so Kingpin kills Bullseye with his bare hands. So there goes Bullseye. It's not a great version of Bullseye, honestly. Like, he's just kind of a henchman with his ability, but he's frankly done better in the Colin Farrell version, and done way better in the Netflix version of the character. But you can kind of see that, we don't have much room to develop this. So Kingpin takes off with basically to leave and continue Operation Z. He's got a dirigible that is full of everything, so they can still pull off this plan. And during basically the scuffle throughout this, Spider-Man was caught under a whole bunch of debris, which is where we get the infamous scene that we would finally get to see in Spider-Man Homecoming, where Spider-Man is trapped under all the rubble and, motivates himself to push himself out of the rubble. Just not with Tony Stark's voice this time, but more of just knowing that, Aunt May and Lynn are still alive, and he has a chance to redeem himself and save them. So he's able to free himself and save Aunt May and Lynn through it, and goes on the dirigible to fight Kingpin for one last time. They get into it. Spider-Man, quote unquote, is winning in spectacular fashion, but during the fight, the gas cells are ruptured and the ship is falling. Kingpin tries a last desperate gamble. He manages to reach the poison dumping control because he was going to poison the city. Threatens to drop the poison unless Spider-Man dives out, possibly to his death. And Spider-Man's no fool. He knows that if he did, Kingpin would dump the poison anyway. So without the weight of the poison, the ship could stay aloft, and Kingpin could complete his escape and his plan. No dice. So Kingpin pulls the switch. Nothing happens. But Spider-Man has webbed the bomb bay doors shut. He can't drop the poison, and they end up grappling. Spider-Man, of course, wins, and the dirigible crashes into the sea, where Spider-Man surfaces, but Kingpin does not. Now, that's kept ambiguous, because we don't know if he just swam somewhere else or he died. It does not say anything about them finding a body. Aunt May, of course, is confused, wondering what happened to that nice man who served them tea, which I thought was hilarious. But at the very end, Lynn and Peter talk, and she decides to, hey, this Spider-Man thing ain't so bad after all.
Glad you came around.
She loves him, and she won't ask him to quit being Spider-Man. And, of course, it ends with the New York Knicks showing up at Peter's door, wondering where the hell he was, because they lost to Philly last night, and they carry him away, and that's the end of the treatment. So
that's kind of funny, though. I mean, it's a funny callback.
It's a funny callback.
I don't hate it.
There is one small character beat that I missed in my notes here, which is the fact that when they are dining for tea with Kingpin, Lynn overhears, Kingpin's obsession that, he has to do this. He has to be the Kingpin of crime. He has to go through, he's compelled to do it. He can't be compelled otherwise. And that's sort of what, I guess, that parallel to Peter and Peter's life as Spider-Man sort of tells Lynn, or makes it sink into her, that she's never going to change him. She's never going to convince him not to be Spider-Man. And I guess with her getting saved by Spider-Man, it just goes to show that this is not a case where he's being reckless and endangering himself. This is him saving other people and, basically fulfilling his heroic calling, which I like. I don't think she necessarily needed to get kidnapped by Kingpin to experience that, but that's the story that we've got here. So, overall thoughts now that you've got the full thing, Andrew.
Yeah, it was pretty good, especially was this going to be made in like 85 or some shit?
Yeah, like 87, 88 maybe.
This would have been fun. I don't like the Knicks thing, but I don't really see... I mean, God, did you see any errors other than the Knicks stuff and the Polaroid picture?
The doctor thing's a little weird, and then Bullseye's kind of
sidelined. Maybe replace that weird stuff with more build-up on Bullseye, and we have like a near-perfect Spider-Man 80s movie, right?
Right, which could have been done well on a budget. Like you don't need a super high budget to do Kingpin or even Bullseye, really.
I would prefer to see low budget sometimes, honestly. I want to see what they do with minimal special effects and shit. So yeah, it would have been kind of cool. That's just the charm of the Japanese Spider-Man. It's just like they have they have no fucking budget at all, and they're doing just insane shit all the time. Even when it looks stupid, it has charm to it. I'm not a CG hater, by the way. If this is anybody's first episode listening, it's just there is something charming about those old days. But Tim, you said your kids like this one the most, right?
It's one of the ones they've listened to this one probably more than a lot of the other ones. Yeah.
Why?
Well, first of all, they love Spider-Man. Even though I cram Batman down their throats as much as I possibly can, because I'm a huge Batman fan, and I think Batman's the best. And in fact, when they heard the Batman audio drama that I produced, where I voiced Batman, they got a kick out of that because I was finally able to be Batman for my kids, And so, but yeah, they love Spider-Man, and it's a cool story. So I think that's why they gravitate to it, because it's really the biggest Spider-Man audio drama that I have on my channel, so they definitely love it.
Okay, I have a niece and nephew. They're 8 and 3, and I was talking to, their parents. What is that? My brother's wife, I guess. She was saying anyway. My sister-in-law, she was saying, like they both went through and the 3-year-old right now is like going through a huge Spider-Man phase. Like every kid goes, in their experience, like all their, both their kids went through a big Spider-Man phase. And I wonder if that's like kind of across the board. Like there's specifically Spider-Man, more than the other comic book characters for whatever reason.
Yeah, and I think it has a lot to do with like the media and movies and what's popular, because when I was a kid, and probably when you were a kid, it was all about Batman, because Michael Keaton's, Tim Burton's Batman movie just came out in 89. They had Batman Returns, they had Batman Forever. So I was absolutely infatuated with Batman my whole childhood. We didn't get a live action Spider-Man movie until 2002. But now, my kids, who are, my oldest is 7, now we have all these Marvel movies with Spider-Man and Iron Man and Captain America. And now it's hard to compete with Batman and Superman and some of these DC characters, because they just don't have as much prominence in, on the big screen in terms of what they see.
That is true. We had 3-4 movies and, a great animated show. Like we were just full up with Batman in the 90s.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
That's interesting.
Still are in some ways. Multiple different versions every single year, and sometimes you're lucky to get like one version of like a more obscure character. But Spider-Man is kind of like the Marvel equivalent in some ways of having multiple different, versions or versions at a time. Even we've got the Spider-Verse movie this year, along with Insomniac's Spider-Man 2 video game coming out, and of course they're in development on another Tom Holland one, but it's getting there. But I can see
that's right.
That is a good point, Tim, in terms of in later generations we got all these Spider-Man movies, whether it's Maguire or Garfield or Holland or even the Spider-Verse. It's a different era. Whereas for us, we were a lot older by the time those movies started coming out.
Yeah, in fact, funny story.
Oh, yeah. I felt the difference with you and Zach even that time we covered. So I'm older than them, Tim. Well, then you don't see the other guy, but we had another co-host named Zach, and they're around the same age. Zach's even younger, right, than you've been? And they were in middle school to early high school. and I was in either a senior. 2002, I was a senior in high school, and then definitely I was in college for the Doc Ock one. So like I have a totally different experience. I feel like than even Ben and than Zach did.
Mm-hmm. Tim, you said you had a story about something.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it was just funny because this morning after me and the kids listened to Spider-Man Operation Z, the audio drama, my son Luke, he's my oldest, he's 7. He's got a costume of every character that he loves, and so he has like probably 3 different Spider-Man costumes. He runs to his room, he puts on his Spider-Man costume, but he wants to put on his clothes over his Spider-Man costume so that he has Spider-Man underneath his clothes like Peter Parker.
Yes.
And so he runs to this big mirror we have in our bedroom, and I didn't see it, but my wife comes out and says, so Luke was just looking at himself in the mirror, and his eyes were beaming. I'm like, oh, that is so cool. That's just precious, man.
That's awesome.
That's what these are for. Like
that's what these are for.
Yeah, the magic for each generation, for each kid and stuff, and that carries with you when you become an adult, inspires you, and to do the right thing and stuff. Like that's why we love these characters. That's why we're still, as adults, engaging with these characters in some way, or doing podcasts or audio dramas with them. Like it really speaks to that. It's because we were all like your kid at some point in our lives.
Yep.
So, do your kids like going to the theater?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, they love the big screen.
Okay, that's good. I've heard some Gen Z, Gen Alpha aren't as into the theater as we were. So I just wanted to ask about that.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I don't know about other kids, but mine definitely do.
Okay, that's good to hear. Good.
Yeah. All right. Well, before we wrap with the discussion on Operation Z, I wanted to give you another spot on the floor to talk about any more upcoming projects on Neuverse Creative you want to talk about, or anything else you want to plug.
Well, thanks again for having me on. As we already mentioned, we have Batman 89 Shadows that we're working on that'll be coming out sometime this year, as well as Batman 3, which is based on the original Batman Forever script by the Bachelors. The cool thing that we want to do with that one is after we do a version of it in the Tim Burton style, like the Burtonverse, we also want to do it in like the Schumacher style with the original cast. Mm-hmm. And we might even call that the Schumacher cut. I don't know. And see if that gets us some views. But I will say really quick, we have most of the voices done for some of these projects. And just one quick plug, there's a great voice actor that we've been working with by the name of Nick Gonzalez. He's great, just like impressionist. And he did Riddler for Batman 3 in the style of Robin Williams.
Oh, nice.
And he just did so good. I can't wait for you guys to hear it, because Robin Williams, when he's acting, he's got his own distinct voice, but he also goes into his own little like character voices, say like in Mrs. Doubtfire and a lot of other movies. And so this guy Nick, he does that with his lines. It's okay. Robin Williams, but he goes into like those different Robin Williams-esque things that he would have done, especially in a Riddler type role. And awesome. So we have a lot of exciting things that I'm really pumped. Again, I wish I could do this. I think I said this earlier. I wish I could do this full time. It's a labor of love. Mm-hmm. So I work on them on my free time. And so I appreciate the support. Definitely check out the channel on YouTube, as well as if you listen to podcasts, go to Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts, and you can find us on there as well.
Awesome. Sick.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Tim. And with
thank you guys.
That is superhero stuff you should know. Big thanks to Dan for gathering the visuals for the YouTube version of this on Operation Z. And again, you guys can check out the audio drama version at Neuverse Creative. The links are down below. We got a few fan comments that I thought were interesting to go over. I know I said that we were sick of talking about The Flash, but these were on things Flash related, but about Michael Keaton's Batman, of course. So Kevin Lee 5753 said, in the Batman 89 comics, there is a gang of Jokers, and Terry's dad, Terry from Batman Beyond, was killed by a gang of Jokers. Well, technically, no, he was killed by George Takei's character, who framed it on the Jokers, but I get what you mean in Batman Beyond. But there is synergy there, says Kevin. Plus, if people want a Return of the Joker scenario, the Batman number 900 comic does show Red Mask going through the multiverse. that could have easily resurrected Jack Nicholson's Joker, seeing he does go through Keaton's timeline. Okay, so for people who don't know what that is, so that there's a comic storyline where a version of Joker called Red Mask goes through the multiverse, and Batman follows him, and Batman ends up meeting other versions of himself, including the Michael Keaton Batman. And during this, when Red Mask goes to different places, if Joker is dead in that on that Earth, then the Joker gets resurrected somehow. So Jack Nicholson's Joker got resurrected through this whole multiverse shenanigan thing. I don't think that's how they would bring him back in the movie, by making it dependent on this one random issue. But let me keep reading this. The Batman that follows him does meet Keaton's Batman, and so if this event is canon to Keaton's story, then that explains how Keaton knew about the multiverse in The Flash. Now, that is cool. I know you and I have talked about, like, well, they shouldn't need that much of an explanation because the multiverse exists outside of comics. It's a real thing. But Kevin brings up something I did not think about, which is the fact that Keaton's Batman does technically meet an alternate version of himself in that comic. So if you were to say that event is canon, where he's met an alternate Batman, then, you know, that could also bring up an explanation, or maybe an explanation of why he would even read up that much about the multiverse outside of him just being bored and in retirement. But it's also one of those things, too, where I'm like, I don't really need there to be much more to it, but it's kind of cool if you want to interpret it this way.
It's fine. I feel like people are going nuts over this particular thing and from the Flash
That
movie.
too. Yeah.
It's just like, dude, it's just like there is like the comic book version of the multiverse is in the comics, but that multiverse theory stuff is from actual real science. So just look that up later, you know, quantum physics and all that shit. But like the whole like canon event stuff and all that, like in Spider-Verse and in the Flash, you know, that part is, I think, not part of science, but like alternate, like the possibility of alternate realities, each being slightly different from another, is supposedly theoretically possible. So there's that. I mean, this explanation is cool, but I think what sets off people about this is that, like, it takes them out of it, I think, because it's like become too meta, I think, for people that don't know that it might actually be science. You know what I mean? It's it's almost like Deadpool turning to the camera, I think, for people that might not have known the science behind it. So that's why it just really presses some buttons.
I guess so too. I don't know if that's the case with Kevin here, but
I don't know. I'm just talking a bunch of shit right now. Yeah. But thank you.
He is providing a possible explanation for anybody who might be bothered by that. But Kevin says, I doubt that Jack Nicholson is even capable of playing the Joker now, since he was already up there in years when he first played him. Yeah.
No, he's retired, right?
He's basically retired. I think there is some footage of him outside the Laker game where people are just like, Jack, you got an upcoming movie? And he's just like, no. So, like,
dude, the guy is 75 plus. He's 80s probably, isn't he?
He's in his 80s, yeah. Well,
dude, just let it.
80s, I would think, because Keaton's already 71, and Nicholson's at least 15 years older, I think.
I believe there was some story saying that he has he's little 86. Bit of Alzheimer's or something. Yeah. He can't remember his lines. He's 86 years old.
Yeah.
Fucking let him, you know, go to a Lakers game, suck on a chili dog, and then have his dick sucked by somebody with a fucking Blue Chew or whatever.
I think
let the man die. I mean, not die. That's too soon. Let the man live. Let the man live out his fucking last years in peace, man.
Yeah, we don't need to ask him to be the Joker again if he's not able to do it. And again, I think it's a case where the idea of a Batman Beyond, again, we've talked about this before, but the idea of Batman Beyond with Keaton does sound cool, but when you really break it down, I'm like, well, it's just not going to be the same, guys. It's not going to be like the show. It's not going to be like, you can't do the greatest story in there, which is Return of the Joker. And even if you did, it's not the same story anyway. Like, Joker died in a different way. You can't do the Tim Drake thing. Or if you did do the Tim Drake thing, Tim Drake existed well after Joker was around. Unless you're saying that Joker also got resurrected beforehand. It's all weird. It's all a mess and stuff. I'd rather they do their own thing with Keaton coming back that has elements of Batman Beyond in it, but isn't necessarily a straight adaptation of it. So thank you, Kevin, for
Yes,
that.
thank you.
Next one, we have Damn Fool, Idealistic Crusader. So this is about the Schumacher cut that does exist, was screened at Smodcastle Cinemas unofficially on July 1st. I've been listening to the Epic Film Guys podcast report on that. And this comment from Damn Fool, Idealistic Crusader says, it seems like this cut of Forever being discussed is an old work print copy which has the original story construction intact, along with what would have been the original edit. The audio, interestingly, and this is, I agree with this, seems to be the onset audio from the description, which indicates more grounded performances. Now, this is something you can't get from a fan cut, right? Because these are other takes from the actual actors in how they said the lines that are apparently more grounded, less over the top than what we get in the final movie that we've grown up with. It says the extensive ADR that was performed on the final theatrical mix, which can be heard in the center channel dialogue if listened to closely. The ADR has noise under it different to the rest of the track. So you could conceivably be able to pick up, if you haven't already, what lines were ADR'd and re-recorded over the main dialogue in the movie to tell which ones were kind of dubbed over in the final film. But if you watch the Schumacher cut, which a few people did at 3 a.m. at Smodcastle Cinema, apparently, then you would have heard the original onset audio, which I think is kind of cool. I sincerely hope this sees a release in any shape or form. Smith's comments indicated the potential screenings were totally unofficial, which it seems like they are. And I figured they likely wouldn't happen once Warner heard about it.
I still do not really understand how Kevin Smith is doing this, being who he is. Mm-hmm. There's like just something's going on here. I don't know.
Yeah, or maybe I hate to say it, but maybe Warner Brothers just somehow weirdly doesn't care. But it seems like they would. Like it's like, an unfinished cut of an older movie.
Kevin Smith, you drum up sort of a grassroots response even more and more than there already is, because you're Kevin Smith. Show something. Mm-hmm. This is like a DC exec, possibly in my head, and then then the eventual end game of this is to get a finalized better cut of what he shows at Smodcastle onto Max. That's the only thing I can think of. But like, how much do they need? The thing I don't understand about my own conspiracy theory is how much do they need Kevin Smith for this? They could just say, "Hey, it's coming" in a tweet, and then everybody will go fucking nuts. Put out a trailer out of fucking nowhere. Schumacher cut, motherfucker. It's coming finally. Yeah, it's weird. And then you get all these comments like Kevin Smith is a liar, and like, dude, honestly, I'm generally the last person to get jaded. So I guess I haven't gotten there with Kevin Smith. Like, I don't really know what he's lied about. To me, I just listen to his podcast and laugh. I don't know what he's lying about. But anyway, that's another time and day for that.
Well, he wasn't
one.
lying about the Batman Forever.
He's got that.
People saw it. People
saw it.
I can't speak about the Batman Beyond thing, but the Batman Forever one, I'm like, people saw it. Epic Film Guys have a whole hour and a half dive in terms of what they saw. That I'm in the middle of listening to. So clearly he has it. He was not lying about that. Unfortunately, that Saturday I definitely couldn't, like, that was sprung up on us in terms of when the dates were, in terms of July 1st. I couldn't go to Jersey for that, and then the tickets are sold out in August when it comes to the other unofficial screening for the Schumacher cut. So as of now, we will not be part of it, but hopefully they can still, these won't be the only 2 times that they show this. Hopefully not.
I mean, we're going to look at this point with this Kevin Smith shit. We're going to, we're probably going to get like a trailer. We're going to get like a little announcement. Maybe even I don't know. I don't want to.
We'll see.
Again, if I knew something, I wouldn't say anything, obviously. Yeah. But just as a fan with my fan hat on, I feel like we might actually get something with a Schumacher cut because they want max traffic. They want max subscriptions. That's what it boils down to. That's it. Nothing else. So, it's a very practical reason. So there it is.
Damn Fool Idealistic Crusader says, I completely agree a Batman Beyond movie wouldn't work because the dynamic of the cartoon wouldn't be able to be replicated. I would say it wouldn't work for Keaton specifically without changes. But the newer comics were cool to see, and if anything, a new animated movie or series would be a much better idea. Okay, so basically he agrees with us.
People love Batman Beyond, though. We're seeing in the comments, like it's definitely struck a nerve, even though it might not be the best Batman thing that was ever created. It is DC's white whale, man. It would be great to see this made. They make something, and I would love for them to have like the crazy sci-fi ideas of Black Mirror and combine that with like a hardened crime drama shit, of the Batman with Roger Deakins shooting that shit.
Doing the cinematography, yeah.
That's kind of a dream movie. But yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yep. This is the last one from Jeffrey. So, if you've been following us for the last few months, we have been co-starring in Jeffrey's independent short film, Derek Magnum. We also became executive producers as of, I think, the last couple of recordings. We announced that. And now we can say that we are co-stars and executive producers of an award-winning film.
Woo!
So, congratulations, Jeffrey. He says this film nabbed its first two awards last night. Like you said, first two awards. It's for sure getting more awards because he submitted to a bunch of festivals, and I know he's going to get more off of that.
Indeed.
So thank you, 8.5 Film Awards. Thank you to Jay Sellers for taking on this role. So Jay Sellers is the main actor. He plays Derek Magnum in this. He won Best Actor at 8.5 Film Awards, deservedly on that because I thought he was good in the movie. So congratulations, Jay. And Jeffrey says, thank you to at Superhouse Pod, us, for believing in the story enough to jump on board. And it was our pleasure.
Yes, a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for putting us on air. And now we can say that we are executive producers on an award-winning film.
Woo!
As well as starring in it. Well, co-starring in it. Jay's the star in that one.
Yeah.
But co-starring in it. But this is awesome. Gives us something to brag about as well. And hopefully there'll be more award news to come. And we'll for sure be announcing that when it comes in. So thank you.
Indeed.
Over to the shout-outs.
All right, everybody. Thanks again. We want to thank Michael G, Slight Rebellion off Madison, Meteor P, Michael W, Bruce K, Tita, Sketchcraft, Kyle B, Darren P, Devin, Titbout, Renee V, and JPF. Thank you, everybody, and everybody else up on the board here, including other supporters. And we've told you about our friends, and now we'd like you to do us a favor.
We want you to tell all your friends about it.